Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Russell from APLYiD. Whether you're having your lunch right now, and maybe you're chomping into some sushi or a sandwich, or you're jumping on a treadmill, maybe you're one of those kind of people. Hope you enjoy the session. This is going to be a no-nonsense approach to Tranche 2, how to get regulated. So with me, my esteemed colleagues in my panel today, I have Brendan, the CEO of AUSTRAC. Hey, Brendan.
Hey, good to see you.
You too. And AJ, the Master and Director of PropTech Association. Hey, AJ.
Good to be here, Russell. Thank you.
Good to see you. And Claudia, I recognise you from the office.
Last but not least, right?
Save the best till last.
Yeah.
Well, that was me.
Okay.
How are you?
Good.
Thanks, guys. Hey, Brendan, do you want to just give yourself a little bit of a profile? Give yourself a bit of an intro.
Yeah, well, my name's Brendan Thomas. I'm the CEO of AUSTRAC. We're kind of responsible for the implementation of this whole Tranche 2 business that we're talking about here. Yeah, thank you. We're the regulator for AML in Australia. Really importantly, we might get onto this later, we're also the financial intelligence unit.
Yep.
So our job is about making life hard for criminals, not hard for businesses.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. AJ, what are you going to
Yeah, excellent. So I'm AJ Chand, and I'm Director of the PropTech Association. I've been CEO of RESO as well, and I've been working with a lot of PropTechs to kind of guide them through the new changes that are coming to the AML, and also at the same time guiding our real estate agents and being an advocate for buyers and vendors as well who are trying to understand this exact change.
Yep. Thanks. Good to see you. Claudia.
And I'm Claudia, the co-founder and co-CEO of APLYiD, who are hosting today. So we are an AML software platform, started in New Zealand, if you can tell by the accent, but also in the UK.
An accent.
Yeah, fish and chips. Also in the UK and Australia now with the launch of Tranche 2, which is cool. And I also have another business called Renty, which is in the property space as well. So very familiar across PropTech, like in AJ's world and AML in Brendan's world.
Cool. Thank you very much, guys. And Russell, I'm the other founder of APLYiD and Renty. So today we're going to keep it as nice and fresh and, no nonsense is kind of the mantra of the business. So it'll be nice and light, but there's going to be a serious undertone to this, obviously, given the topic that we're talking about. But I'm going to jump straight in for you, Brendan. In one sentence, what does AUSTRAC require regulated businesses to have ready by the 1st of July 2026?
Pretty hard to answer in just one sentence.
One sentence.
It's yeah.
You're running harder.
You had to be compliant with the law.
Okay, two.
Yeah. So we expect people to have an AML officer,
Yep.
a risk assessment, and an AML program, and be ready to start to report to us.
Okay. Can I ask you something on that one?
Yeah.
So an AML officer,
Yes.
what does that really mean?
Well, the law in Australia defines who an AML officer, which is a fit and proper person. You can see that in our rules and regulation. In practice, it means someone who's responsible for making sure that you've got an AML program and that program is doing what you intend it to do.
So it doesn't need to be someone trained. It could be someone appointed that then gets the basics.
Yeah, it can be someone who's appointed who then familiarises themselves with the law and what happens with AML programs.
Yeah.
But given the scale of Tranche 2, you're not going to get 100,000 AML experts out there on any given day.
Not turning up the rest of the world.
Well, I don't even think there's enough for the rest of the world.
No, right. They've already been moving to Australia.
Yeah.
I mean, you've covered this already, but in plain English, what is Tranche 2 and what is it actually requiring businesses to do? I mean, you've kind of covered it.
Yeah.
Is there more to it?
There is. I mean, if I give you kind of the 101 of why it's there, we've been we've been regulating.
Yeah.
Hopefully not laundering it in. We've been regulating kind of financial business and gambling businesses for 20 years around money laundering. But there's been a hole in the Australian economy, and we can see it by being the financial intelligence unit. We can see criminals jumping through these holes pretty regularly, where people are laundering money in real estate transactions. Lots of dirty money in Australian real estate coming from both Australian criminals, but also overseas into the Australian real estate market. And in also criminals laundering money through company structures, shelf companies, those kinds of arrangements. Tranche 2 is trying to shut both of those things down, or at least make it harder for criminals to launder money through those areas. In property, it's really about property businesses understanding who their clients are. And if they don't understand who their clients are, asking some reasonable questions of those people to try and understand who those clients are.
Yeah.
And if you're still suspicious, reporting it to us. In a nutshell, that's really what it's about.
So it's it's considered whistleblowing to some degree, right? But it's not really about that because it's obviously behind the scenes. You're not going to stop someone and say, sorry, we can't serve you as a customer.
That's right. One of the things we don't ask people is to stop business. So if you're suspicious about somebody, you can still continue that transaction.
Yeah.
I know people get a little bit confused because in other parts of the world, they actually do ask them to stop the transaction. We don't. We don't in Australia. And I can tell you, banks go through suspicious transactions all the time where the transaction goes all the way through the bank account. And it's important because it gives us a lot of intelligence that we otherwise wouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we don't ask people to stop the transaction, but we do ask people to let us know where they're suspicious about someone or suspicious about their transaction. And what happens is it comes to us, can't be used publicly, so that information will never turn up in a police charge sheet. It'll never turn up in the papers at court. So if someone ends up being prosecuted from the information someone's given us, it will never get back to that person that a suspicious matter report.
Of course.
No.
And suspicious is a good word. Sorry, I will get to you guys. I'm honing in. Suspicious and interesting because that's kind of the whole area of Tranche 2, or AML just generally, it's risk-based suspiciousness. It's all quite, cloak and dagger. But knowing a bit about it as we do, suspicious activity could be something as simple as bank transferred someone 20 grand to buy a car or something like that. And that transaction goes through and then the bank sees it and and then someone behind the scenes investigates it. But it's 99.9% of the time it's just largely, that's fine, move on. Right?
That's right. Yeah. So importantly with the Tranche 2, it recognises that a whole bunch of people are low risk.
Yeah.
Most people that do business, real estate transactions, accountants, their customers are low risk.
Yeah.
And we want the minimum level of activity for those customers. It's where the risk sits that we want people to focus their effort. Yeah. If you treat everybody as a high risk, you're going to miss the real high risk people.
Yeah.
So this is really about understanding what looks unusual. And it draws on businesses' understandings of what usual actually is. Mm. So someone who's involved in real estate and been involved in real estate for a long time will know when something looks suspicious, when something looks out of the ordinary. And we're relying on people understanding that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
By the way, this isn't me just interviewing here. Feel free, guys, if you have questions. I know Claudia always has a question up her sleeve or two, even though she has no sleeves.
It's, I don't have sleeves. It's probably more of a reflection than a question, but we've certainly seen it in New Zealand and in the UK, but 99% of transactions are totally fine. Yeah. And so you want to make sure that it's as simple as possible for all of those people, but is actually capturing the ones that are trying to do bad things. And so you'd say the key there is consistency. So yes, risk-based approach, but having a consistent approach across everything so that it's very easy to flag those things early rather than sort of manual workarounds or different systems or maybe different people in the firm doing different things. It's how do you have as embedded and consistent approach as possible.
That's right. And for a lot of people, a lot of businesses, they're doing some of these things anyway. They're already asking their clients who they are. They're collecting some information on their clients. Yeah. And where that's the case, people should continue to do that. You might need to document things a little slightly differently and keep records that you might not otherwise have kept. But we want people to try and build this into their regular business practice as much as we possibly can. Yeah. So that it becomes as simple as and as easy as possible, and focus on risk. That's what we want people to do, is focus on risk.
We don't. We want to serve what you need from these kind of, customers, serving up that risk, finding that risk as it were. We're more interested in doing what you mentioned before, which is making it a part of their business, so that when you're onboarding someone, especially in real estate, well, all parts, you really want to make it super, super frictionless, right? These customers are important to you.
That's right.
They're going to be paying you for your services or the properties or whatever it is that you're doing. If it's a rubbish experience, this isn't me peddling a software platform. It is APLYiD by now. It's more like if you start to investigate products and things like that as you're looking for it, or processes just in general, if it's a poor experience, you go through it yourself and you think, that was actually quite nice and enjoyable, and you can sew it into what you do as a business, you've already won.
Yeah.
Most of the rest of it will just come, right? But if that bit's not right, you're already going to create that bottleneck for yourself in AML that it already now is. So, I think that's what a lot of people were talking about this earlier on, which is it is now a bottleneck for a process, but you can make it as big a bottleneck as you want, right? But you can also make it quite small, neat and tidy. Any more questions for Brendan on that topic? Or me? Okay, great. AJ, being a man of many talents and many connections, if you had to give agencies one practical action to take this month, what would it be?
And we've been speaking to our agents about this quite a bit. So RESO serves a lot of agents, and a lot of agents have been asking questions around this and how it impacts their buyer experience and the vendor experience as well on top of that. The one piece of advice I've been given them is to just go have a look at the AUSTRAC guidelines and just kind of familiarize yourself with it. The reality is, in most cases, the softwares in this field, the prop techs have solved this problem, and it will be a couple of clicks for agents to use, and you'll verify everyone and you'll run through the process. So my message to them has been, don't panic. It's not that daunting. A lot of the prop tech suppliers
It's a big read.
Yeah. A lot of prop tech suppliers have already kind of solved this problem. And a lot of them are running a lot of content right now, like webinars and roundtables like these ones, so that real estate agents are more comfortable with that. But it would just familiarize yourself with what this is, especially the acronyms. It gets thrown around a lot, the AML, the CDF, the PEP, and you've got all of these acronyms. Just kind of get to know why we're doing this and why it's necessary. And I think it's, for real estate, it should have been best practice for a long time, because there is a lot of fraud, and especially trust account breaches and things like that, which then at the end of the day, the consumer is the one holding the bill. So
yeah, you're right.
So yeah, but it's just, don't panic. Have a read through all the content that AUSTRAC has, and then start having a look at a couple of webinars or replays of webinars that a lot of the prop tech providers have done.
Yeah. You were going to say something, Brendan?
I was going to say, yeah, we try and make as simple as we can in terms of the material that we put on our website, and there's more and more coming on there all the time, and more videos for people. So get on our website and have a look and familiarise yourself with it. But you can sign up to our newsletters and updates and things. So get on there and do that as well.
You guys are definitely the most approachable regulator that we've ever seen.
We're trying to win.
We're really sort of UK. You're like, someone's emailing me. Wow. And the guidance and stuff that's come out, amazing, second to none for you guys. It's really, really cool. And it just goes to show that what you really want is removing the apathy. Yeah. It isn't that hard if you just take it just a little bit of a beat, take a bit of a moment to read it, digest it, but also software that's out there from all parts of the AML component. There's so much you can do to make it easier. It's not actually as daunting as it looks. You want to add something, Claudia?
Not particularly, other than to say the deadline is obviously looming.
Both.
And it's one of those things. You guys have been so proactive in putting materials together and putting starter packs together and helping organizations that maybe don't have a big compliance team or lots of resources to get right underneath it. There's lots of organizations that are becoming reporting entities that might be 2 or 3 people in the organization. And so you're running really hard to try and bring in business and, keep growing and deliver your strategy and billable hours or sell houses or whatever it might be. Carving out that time and effort and energy to learn what you have to do can feel reasonably like, I'll put that in a box for later, which is completely understandable. And being a business owner myself, I get it. Like, we all do it. It's just,
we never miss deadline.
I'm not saying miss deadlines. I'm saying pushing it to the limit. It's just trying to rip the Band-Aid off and put a little bit of effort in, and then actually you can just relax because you realize it's not that hard and it's not that complicated. And it's like that sort of thing on your shoulder that's stressing you out, that you put a little bit of time into it and it can go away very quickly.
Like a haircut for me.
Like a haircut.
Yeah. Apologies for that. Actually, let's just charge that question again then. So it's the last day of June, right? It's going to be interesting. If you had to give the agencies one practical action to take right now, you've missed everything. What would that be? Ooh, I don't know. I've gone off script.
It'll just very much be the same. It will be, you have to do it.
You got it. It's tomorrow.
Yeah, it's whether you're someone that's proactive and gets on it months before it's going to happen or the day before. But I think you have to start educating yourself around it. Yeah. Also, real estate agents, like, they're consumers as well. They transact, they buy properties, and I think everyone right now, after that point, could sleep a little bit easy knowing that you kind of have some kind of protection.
Yeah.
It's the last day of June. The first thing you need to do is register with us. So if you haven't done that, you need to jump online to
That's true.
because you might fall yourself in a little bit of trouble if you're not.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of what percentage
of the reporting entities have registered so far?
Well, none yet, see, because you can't.
Oh, you can't.
No, from the 31st of March, you'll be able to register with us.
Can you play a betting game and get a number of what you think is going to be done?
Well,
Everyone, right, Brendan?
we believe hundreds of businesses. We're doing as much as we can to try and tell as many businesses as possible to go on and get ready. We've tried to make the process as simple as possible, and between next week and 31st of March, and then from March into June, there'll be lots of material available. We'll be having seminars for businesses to come online to show them how to fill in the form and what we need, and lots of help material available for people. So we're trying to get as many businesses as we possibly can. Registers are very difficult to put a number on it because,
Of course.
who knows?
It's 96,000, is it? Is that the actual number?
Yeah, it's about 80,000 new businesses. Yeah,
Right.
about 80,000 new businesses.
It's a big number.
It's a big number.
It's a big team for you.
It's a big number.
So
Hope you've got
process
your
that.
Wi-Fi expansion ready.
We've already done that, and we're still testing all of that stuff.
Crashed.
The website's got to work on day one.
Yeah.
We've got a new website. We've done a whole bunch of
It looks good, actually.
tech uplifts, and a new call center with actual people in it, lots of people in it to answer people's questions.
Not AI?
No, there's a little bit of that, but mainly people.
Yeah.
And lots of training of those people to make sure that they answer those questions as effectively as we possibly can.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we are doing, and we've been regulating the financial sector for 20 years,
Yeah.
we still learn about people's experience with regulation and what they do in terms of combating AML. And we'll do that with the Tranche 2 businesses, and we'll change and adapt as we go forward together with this.
But at least you do.
Yeah.
Like,
We
it
listen
doesn't
to
always
lawyers
this way.
Well, we've seen that play out in New Zealand as well, to be fair. I think the regulator is constantly reviewing and adapting the rules to make it as easy as possible to comply, removing address from a verification piece.
More detail, because that's an interesting one which might come up down the line.
Well, yeah, so in New Zealand's AML rules, there was a requirement you had to do name, date of birth and address.
Yeah.
And it was the address component that was just causing so many failures and so many follow-ups and lots of process.
Pause you on that one a second, because I think our audience, we believe, is going to be the small businesses that just don't really get this sort of stuff in a practical sense. What that means is onboarding AJ and Claudia to buy a property. They've moved into a new address. They're about to move again. So their data, when we do a verification, shows that they're not matching at that address, that they're remote, they're on holiday somewhere, and you're trying to close that property sale. They've now got to go and find a proof of address utility bill and send it through to them so that they can move them forward with the process. So if you've got a market, say, in New Zealand, I think it's sort of 85% of data can be used to match an address, with the other 15%, you'll have to do that secondary method. So when you start working out in practical terms, in terms of, I've got to onboard 300 customers this month, then all of a sudden, 15% of them you can't, or it's slower, it starts to have a bit of an impact on your business in the practical sense. I think it's worth just explaining that.
Which is where the regulator's great. And I think learning from the industry is so useful, because often you don't know what you don't know in terms of how stuff's going to flow through. And then you start to see friction points turn up.
Yeah.
And then it's how you listen and adapt and adjust as you go.
And we listen all the time. And I think it's important for people to know what we do with the information when we get it.
Mm-hmm.
So we might get a report from a real estate agent about John Smith, who's just bought a house and looks kind of dodgy.
Yeah.
We'll get that and match it with a whole bunch of other data. And so that source that's identified that person is really important, because there's going to be a million John Smiths in the data set. We need to make sure we're matching the right ones.
So true.
So that we're getting proper pictures of criminality.
Yeah.
But there's other ways of doing that, and there's many different ways of doing that. And I mean, we're talking to our colleagues in the banking sector now about traditional ways of identifying people are just subject to generative AI fraud at scale.
Oh, yeah.
Huge scale around the world, and it's a massive challenge. And so we need to think differently about how we might start to identify people and what the methods we use for that identification are. So it's fast, you can do it at a scale, but it's also defeating the criminal organisations that are using AI.
It's quite terrifying, that, actually. There's quite a lot of that in the UK going on in the financial services sector. Lots of AI-generated driver's license and passports. It's quite easy these days, given all the breaches that have happened over the world, to grab hold of someone's data and identity and credit profile. And to knock up a passport online is getting, crazy easy. Yeah. So good tech. It's kind of hard, right? We're sitting in a position where we don't love, as a business, there's a bit of a fear-mongering to some of the stuff, right? panic. Oh my God. It makes people, especially in that SME space, go, oh my God, this is terrifying. We were at a conference together and I heard one of the real estate people saying, I might as well shut my business down then. It's like, it's all right. It's not that scary.
It's not that bad.
Just relax.
There's no reason to close your business.
Correct. But it is crucial that you are implementing pieces of tech that can do some of that, because you're never going to be able to tell yourself these days. It's really hard to tell. Like, we're in that space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really complicated.
Multi-layers built in without you really thinking about it or having to do any work. Yep.
Now, there's also a risk of running it manually anyway, because if you do take copies of IDs, for example, and this has always been a massive issue in the rental and the sales spaces, how do you stop that ID from going missing and then rotating back as identity fraud later on down the track? So,
Yeah, you're right. I'm going off script again.
Yeah.
But in a practical sense, one of the other things that needs answering is, I've known Brendan for 20 years. I've been working for forever. How do I then, as a business, explain to Brendan what I've got to do without poo-pooing what AUSTRAC has to do? That's right. Oh, the dirty regulators always do this. It's like, that's not really the case. What would you say, like, in a practical sense? How would you educate your customer?
Yeah, I mean, you can say it's a legal requirement that I ask you these things. And I'm sure if you've been doing business with someone for 20 years, they want you to be able to comply with the law.
Yeah.
And it's not onerous. We're not asking for detailed personal information from people, other than basic information that you're giving over 10 times a day when you're signing onto websites and doing other things. I mean, you're giving over lots of this same information all of the time throughout your daily business. It's only when a suspicion arises that you start to ask those more detailed questions. Yeah. And I can tell you, we've got lots of examples where someone's been dealing with John Smith for 20 years and John Smith turns out to be a money launderer.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard though, like thinking about it being on the front line.
Yeah.
I've known you a long time and then I now have to ask you for a bit of information and I get the motive correct. But you just say no. Like, that's the hard bit. Like, we've had lots of law firms that we work with in New Zealand that some of their customers just say, no, I'm not doing it. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
And you've got to get through that. So it's tricky. Don't know how they've done it, but again, it comes back to that.
What's the suspicion?
Swiftest process to can. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Good segue to a question for you and I. Russell and Claudia, did you start APLYiD because you absolutely love AML?
Yes, definitely. Compliance is my favorite thing. No, I think we started APLYiD because we saw so much friction and pain and, how can you make processes simpler and easier with technology? Both growing up around tech and good systems.
I'm not sure if I've grown up.
Maybe not you, I have. In different worlds. But yeah, how can you really remove that customer friction as much as possible with something that you don't even really have to think about?
Yeah.
I think there's great underlying benefits in terms of, stopping that financial crime and moving money around and holding it in property and all of those good things. I don't know if we set out necessarily to solve that particular piece. It was much more, how do we make a clunky process much easier than it needed to be? And that's really what we're focused in on.
Both of the businesses are very much at the heart of onboarding with no friction. Right? That's what they're really all about. I do have one regret when we first started, is calling it APLYiD, which was my fault, because we get APLYiD, APLYiD, we get all sorts of different things. So my pledge is,
we're missing a P.
it is APLYiD. There's a genuine story. He actually couldn't afford the second P for the URL. So like, start a business, guys. Like, APPLYID, that's cool, but it's like 60 grand for the URL. So like, let's drop a P, it'll look cool in tech. It worked. Cool. So, poor Brendan, he gets all these questions. AUSTRAC walked into a firm tomorrow. That'd be quite interesting. That'd be a lot of people walking into a firm. Yeah. But if AUSTRAC walked into a firm tomorrow, what would you like to see? Hang on a minute. I'll let you answer that one first.
We do work in lots of firms all the time.
True.
We do that as part of our job. What we like to see is people taking their obligations seriously. And we look for a bunch of things. We look, have you got a risk assessment? Yep. We look and say, are you asking your customers the questions we expect you to ask of them? And are you reporting suspicion?
Yep.
If I can debunk a couple of myths that go around.
Go for it.
People are worried that if they report suspicion to us, that will put them on our radar and we'll come and have a look at them. It's the exact reverse.
Yeah.
If we don't see businesses reporting, we go and have a look. We expect people to try and launder money.
We were talking about this earlier, so you touched on it earlier on at the beginning of this, but I think it's worth talking about that again because that was really interesting for me to know, given that I'll let you explain it. You'll be doing it better than me. But you see the financial stuff anyway.
We get so much intelligence from the businesses that we regulate now, and we get information from law enforcement, from national security agencies, from other data sources. Yeah. So we see a lot of dirty money in the real estate. In the economy now. Yeah. In the real estate industry in particular, we can see where dirty money is flowing. So we can tell where we expect to see money laundering emerging in different parts of the business, different geographical parts of the country. And we look at the businesses in those areas and say, well, are you reporting to us? Are you identifying risky customers or not? Yeah. And if not, we'll go and have a look. Yeah. And if a business isn't doing what they're supposed to do, we might take regulatory action. But most of the time we work with those businesses to try and get them to understand what they can do better and where they might want to focus their attention better.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It'd be really interesting to see, obviously money is being laundered. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And we were talking again about this before, and I've seen this in historic times when this still happened in different countries, that the smaller businesses that don't come on board, they're where all of that money starts to channel towards because they typically have inferior setups to be able to work with you, but also, protect themselves and their own brand.
Yeah.
That's an interesting spot. Would you say that would be right?
Yeah, very much so. So as parts of the economy start to close money laundering out, that money laundering moves.
Yeah.
So if you take Australia...
More sophisticated as well.
Yeah. So if you take Australia, we know that the drug market in Australia is worth $19 billion a year. It's one of the most lucrative drug markets in the world. For some reason, we buy lots of drugs and we pay really good prices for drugs illegally. All that money gets moved through the economy. And what people don't realise is the foes that we're dealing or fighting against are professional money laundering organisations. That's all they do.
Yep.
So someone will go to those drug dealers, buy their money from them and then launder it.
Yep.
And so they'll look for...
It's very Ozark.
Yeah, very Ozark. They look for any holes they can find. And if they can see someone who's asleep at the wheel and there's an opportunity to launder money through that place, they'll jump through it and launder as much money as they can until they get shut down.
Yeah, totally.
How uplifting
that's not,
isn't it?
Yeah. Without sounding like I'm trying to fearmonger, I'm genuinely interested. Because if they're starting to get target in pockets of areas, right, the launderer doesn't care. They'll just roll one after the other.
Yeah.
What happens to that business?
Well, I mean, if the business has got dirty money going through it, the consequences are terrible. I mean, they might be subject to criminal activity, particularly if they're knowingly involved in that. So forget tranche 2, they're already committing crimes if they're knowingly involved in the proceeds of crime. And they can lose their business, their freedom, being involved in that. But on top of that, if you get exposed as a business that's subject to illicit finance, you'll lose business. Yeah. I mean, we've seen it in Australia where we've taken regulatory action against some of the biggest companies in the country. They suffer serious financial consequences.
Yeah, of course.
The fine they get from us is the least of their worries.
Yeah.
Their boards go, their CEOs go. Some of them are still only just resolving class actions from shareholders now 5 or 6 years after the penalty has come through. So the difficulty of being exposed to financial crime just continues. It's best not to deal with it at all.
Yeah, I mean, there's negligence, right?
Yeah.
But there's also apathy and ignorance, and both are bad. One's worse than the other, obviously. Yeah. But it's like, if you know it can be done relatively easily, following everything that you guys have said from a, guidance point of view, finding the tech that makes sense, leaning up on other people that you know in other countries that have already done it, tick a few, but I hate saying that because it's really not a box ticking exercise, but you can have a little checklist, right? There's this little 2 or 3 things that you need to get done, tick them off, get them done, do it on time, and then make sure whatever you've done can evolve. Because my thing is with Australia is that nobody's done it, so nobody knows what it's going to be like for their company.
Yeah.
3 months in, you're in the middle of this 12-month or 3-year-long sales cycle that you've signed up some software. You're like, oh my God, this is shocking for my business. Go in as simple as you can. Go and have a little look, mess around with some stuff, and find out whether it's going to work for you. Yes,
but
Claudia.
As Brendan said at the beginning, actually it's just registering.
Yeah.
And then it's having a consistent process, someone that's responsible and reporting.
Yeah.
Right? And keeping records. So it's actually quite straightforward when you break it down like that to do enough to be protecting yourself and your business and your clients as well.
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate thing is know who you're doing business with.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you're not satisfied, you know who you're doing business with, ask some reasonable questions. Mm-hmm. We don't ask people to be detectives. We don't ask people to be cops.
No.
Just ask what's reasonable to ask. And if you can't satisfy that suspicion, report it to us.
Yeah.
It's your job to go and do
That's our job to go
the narrative.
after that.
the real digging.
Yeah, that's our job, the real detectives. That's it. That's it.
Okay. So where do you, AJ, see that, particularly in that SME space, where do you think the risk's sitting at the moment? Like, we talked a bit about being ready, et cetera, but if we're talking about post-July, where do you think some of the risks sit for businesses in that SME space?
Well, I think the risk of, like Brendan said, the risk of doing business with people who are going to be laundering money through your businesses is the biggest risk, right? So I think the majority of the risk here sits with businesses who kind of put it in the too hard basket and then don't act on it. I think that's going to be a big risk. But I think the industry itself is kind of looking forward and welcoming this change, which is really good after the whole shock of it died down a little bit. So the biggest risk for the businesses is really just making sure that they're doing the basics and they align their teams to be able to do the basics, and maybe even do some training around trying to figure out what red flags look like and what should be reported.
It's a little bit like the risk assessment piece, really, like linking back to it all comes down to risk. So how do you design a risk assessment that's really fit for your business? Because it won't be the same for everyone, so that you can identify those risks early and know what to report. And the other thing that I would probably call out is identifying the beneficial owners. So sometimes if it is a higher risk piece, things can be buried in layers, and that's where things can get quite complicated and a bit lost. So starting to peel back those layers and getting comfortable around it is probably another area that there's a fair amount of risk associated with that piece, because that's where people are savvy and trying to hide things.
And you don't need to know everything. It's about reporting that suspicion to us. I'll give you an example. Well, we get huge amounts of information from banks, for instance. Some of it might be CCTV from an ATM transaction, for instance. And I know of cases where we'll get CCTV in from a dodgy ATM transaction, and the police will look at it and say, we don't know the person that's making that transaction, but the guy standing behind him, we do. We know who that is.
Interesting.
And so that little piece of information that the bank wouldn't have even known, once it comes to law enforcement, there's additional context that you can put around it. Okay. And so, as I say, we don't ask people to be police or detectives. Tell us what's suspicious. We'll take it from there and we'll look into the rest of it.
Just put cameras everywhere.
No, don't put cameras. Don't put cameras.
Put cameras everywhere.
And for those that maybe don't know, how do they report suspicious activities? What sort of information are you looking for? What's the process?
There's an online form that people go on and fill in, but basically we're looking for the grounds of suspicion. So what made you suspicious about this person or that transaction? Put as much detail in that as you possibly can. And if there is a transaction involved, put the details of that transaction. So how much money was involved, where did it go, where do you know about it? But we're asking you to give us what you know. We're not asking you to go and do any fresh digging with other bodies or anything. Tell us what you know. But really, that grounds of suspicion really matters. So put as much detail as possible in that.
And one more question. What's the process from there? Will you typically respond to the reporting entity?
No.
Or do they just, that's it?
They leave it with us, We're doing a lot of work to get better at talking to businesses about what we do with their information. But often it's not a linear link. So it's not often you put in a suspicious matter report, it goes to the police, someone gets arrested. What often happens is you'll give us a suspicious matter report that will come into a whole bunch of other data and help fill in pictures of a bigger puzzle. So often the strength isn't just an individual report, it's an aggregate of multiple reports. And in that, linked with other data that we get from other places, builds big pictures of criminality. And so we use those reports. It does happen where we get a report, goes to the cops, someone gets arrested. That certainly does happen. But we use it to form the basis of criminal intelligence reports, of breaking up criminal networks and criminal gangs. But we also use those reports to understand the nature of criminal activity, like what are people actually doing and how are they laundering money and how is that changing? Also what the channels are that people are using, because that changes all of the time. Criminals maybe were laundering in this channel and they're shifting to this one and that one. And so that then helps us get information we can provide back to industry, and industry can then use that to close those channels down. We do that a lot with the banks. We've done that a lot on mule accounts, on child sex payments, on extortion payments, where we work together to understand what's actually happening, and then we go back and say, well, let's put some controls in place to try and shut that down. But that comes from those reports as well.
Speaking as a software provider in that space, though, just thinking out loud, that is there going to be an API to that register?
Not yet, but that's something that we will be looking forward in the future.
Because that would be super cool for those businesses that want to be part of this and report, etc., but maybe aren't completely sure why and whether the providers like us and others in the market could work with you guys and like, what could we look for that's a little bit subtle that we could
Absolutely
flag that to you so it's actually taking it out of those customers' hands?
That's right.
I think that, that would be great.
We certainly do that with the banks where
It's like transaction monitoring and things.
yeah, we get individual reports, but we also look at big data sets collectively together to say, what does this data tell us about where the risk is and where people are laundering money? And that's incredibly valuable.
It's like PEPs. PEPs is quite a challenging
Yeah.
topic. So for those that don't know, that's a politically exposed person.
Yeah.
Which means that you could be a judge or a high politician or whatever, which means you're able to potentially be bribed into being a bit dodgy.
Yeah.
But the problem is with it, it's all quite challenging to match. So the John Smith analogy you gave before, if it's John Smith, born in 1987, blah, 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 there's probably a few hundred John Smiths. So you got to trawl through that sort of... It's a popular name, popular people. We'll just leave it as that. So yeah, it's just it's an interesting one. I'm thinking back to that topic there before and like automating some of this sort of stuff that we're trying to look at clever ways to use AI and stuff like that to make that even slicker, quicker and better for people that don't have to trawl through lots of information to make those decisions. PEPs, though, is a solid database on a global scale. It exists as a massive database. Is it not something that could just be plugged into you that then we could reverse engineer that somehow?
Yeah, I mean,
This is off script again. I'm literally asking.
we're probably not in a good position nationally to maintain a global database because it changes so often.
True.
Yeah.
New people come and go from those lists all of the time. But we strongly encourage businesses to use tech as much as possible to make this as simple as it possibly can be. Yep. So, sanction screening is a good example. There is a single list that's available from the Sanctions Office in Australia, and that search should be pretty straightforward. A lot of PEPs do stay PEPs for a long period of time, but nevertheless, they do come and go. And foreign PEPs is a challenge, like knowing whether somebody's a member of parliament in some other country you've never dealt with is a bit of a challenge for people. Yep. I'm a PEP, so I have to be subject to those additional bits of scrutiny.
But it doesn't mean a PEP doesn't mean that you're bad.
No,
it means that you're exposed to potentially being bad.
That's right.
I'm sure you'll find, Brendan.
I hope so.
Yeah. But it's just a tick you've got to get through in terms of the process. Yeah.
And it's a valuable one. I can tell you, we do see money coming in through PEPs.
Just a quick question, just to clarify something there, Brendan. So if an agent is to identify suspicious behavior, for example, right now, and reports it to AUSTRAC, AUSTRAC doesn't get back to that agent to say what they're doing with that.
No.
So in that case, do they still go ahead with the transaction and let that transaction go through?
Yeah. So there's a couple of points to say there. The risk is really up to the business as to how much risk they want to bear and how much they know about that person. So they might be dealing with someone and maybe they're worried about that person's source of wealth. So the person doesn't look like they should have the amount of money they've got. But you've got no other evidence other than it doesn't look right. You might put a suspicious matter report into us. If you're dealing with a person and that person gives you a deposit and says, I got this money by selling drugs, for instance.
They're an idiot.
They're an idiot. But you then know you're dealing with the proceeds of crime and you're in you're in a different realm there. Yeah. And you might want to say, well, I don't want to take your money and I don't want to do business with you anymore. But certainly, I mean, I can tell you our banks report hundreds of thousands of suspicious matter reports to us every year and they continue those transactions all the time.
It's a good question, though, that.
And so then that just feeds back. Because coming back earlier to the conversation that you want to be an organisation that isn't working with those sorts of people.
Yes.
That often won't know. And you still want to do business. And so you face this conundrum where it's like, I'm not feeling very confident here, but I'm doing all the right checks and balances.
Yeah.
That's really on you as a business operator to make a call as to how you want to proceed going forward.
So presumably you've got that problem now when you're dealing with a client and you think, this person looks dodgy. I'm not sure if this person's money is coming from the right place.
That's the target.
Yeah, so I mean, presumably there are those challenges now in dealing with this business where you get someone who looks slightly dodgy and you've got to make that call of how much risk do I want to take? Do I want to do business with this person or not? And that's really a matter for a business to make that determination. From an AUSTRAC point of view, we don't require you to stop that transaction. There are, as I mentioned, there are other jurisdictions that require you to stop it or halt it or do something with the transaction. We don't in Australia.
In a practical sense then on that one, so let's say got everything sorted out, one of those crims comes through, you report it, and then you've obviously sold the property, etc., we carry on. Surely that you'd be a target then for those sort of criminal network groups anyway. Possible. So then you'd see more. So you carry on doing what you're doing, but you've done all of what you're supposed to do from a regulator point of view. And you guys are picking up the suspicious activity at the top. Then I'm assuming if you know that someone's being targeted, but they're doing everything they can to continue, that's where you'd step in and sort of work that. How would that work?
Well, I mean, if you were
Interesting thing to.
giving us a suspicious report on a person,
Yep.
and then you dealt with that person again, and you gave us another suspicious report, and again,
Yeah,
we might
that's-
come and ask you some questions about what you're doing.
But if it was not the same person,
But
because they were in a syndicate or something.
Or a related person.
Yeah.
Well, it depends whether that relationship would obviously be known to the business. In some cases it may be, in other cases it might not be.
True.
Criminals might be referring their friends to you, but you don't know that that's that criminal's friend.
Yeah.
But again, it's about your own level of suspicion and reporting that suspicion to us.
Yeah.
And your own good sense as a business person as to how much risk you want to take on. And hopefully business people are making those decisions already without AML prompting them to do that.
Let's talk a little bit about risk assessments, actually. I'm going off script again. Getting wild. So, templates. Good or bad. Right. And also, I think this is an interesting topic for lots of people, actually. I think there's a bunch of questions there. So, having a template isn't something that they can rely on, right? So, do you want to expand on templates, good or bad, in terms of...
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to the legal principle that it's up to the business owner to understand the risk that they're exposed to and to put in place controls to mitigate that risk.
Yes.
So a lot of businesses are similar and deal with similar amounts of risk. And we've just released starter programs because we believe lots of small businesses are exposed to very similar risks that require very similar controls to control that risk. But even if you're a small business and you're doing business with highly risky people in highly risky environments, you need to understand that. And as a business person, it's your responsibility to make sure
That makes sense.
your controls are dealing with that level of risk.
Yeah. So, interesting one for you then. So I totally agree with that. But if you don't know that, and you're a little bit sort of not necessarily naive to the point, but like you just want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Truly don't understand it. You probably missed that deadline we've been talking about. And you're like, oh my God, it's the end of June. It's Claudia. She's sitting at the desk going, oh no, I've got to do it.
Yeah.
We're going to put into our product a template.
Yeah.
Which means that everybody can jump in and have something already built. But it should be temporary. It should be something that you can use for a little bit until you start getting your policies kind of catch up.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Well, we don't expect people to be money laundering experts in July this year.
No.
Who've never dealt with it before and potentially most of them never even thought about it before.
Yeah.
And we expect people to mature as they do this more often. I mean, this is a learning experience for everybody that's involved.
Total. Yep.
Someone who's never dealt with money laundering before is going to start dealing with a risk they've probably never thought about other than watching a TV show or reading a crime book.
It's a good show.
Yeah, it's a pretty good show. But as they do it more, they should become more appreciative of the nature of the risk that they're exposed to.
Yeah.
And we've certainly got lots of information on our website and in the starter programs about the kinds of things that they want to have a look at.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to what we were saying before as well about don't get wedded to something immediately.
Get started.
Get started.
Get started.
Something. Just don't not.
Get started and get better as you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Get started. It is a bit of a practicing thing, isn't
Yeah,
it? Right.
very much.
And I don't think, sorry, Claudia, I'm always interrupting you, Anna. But I don't think you're going to come after those businesses, that have, tried. At least try and do something good.
So one of the other things you can see on our website is all the action we've taken against people.
Yeah.
What you won't see on that website is us chasing small businesses who are trying. We don't do that. We don't do that at all. We work with people to try and help them get better.
But it's the small businesses piece that we're, it is a focus for those criminal syndicates that those are the ones they're going to turn to, not the big national brands that have got, budgets to be able to cope with this sort of stuff. Yeah. So it's not to scare you in that space, but it is something that you should consider as,
Look, if I give you an example, there's some colleagues of ours at a place called the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission.
Yep. 3
times a year they pay someone to do a very nasty but very important piece of work, which is wastewater sampling. So they go around Australia and they test the sewage.
Tasty.
Yeah. And they do that to get a good understanding of drug use in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
You get so much information out of that. They can
They do
tell.
the same with the Thames.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. They can tell not only how many people are using drugs, but how often they're using it each day, what different combinations of drugs individual people are using.
Okay, they just look at the seagulls, don't they have red eyes?
But from that, we get really detailed understanding of the drug market, and it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So I often get businesses will say to me, I come from this little country town or this nice part of the world, but I can tell you people in that place are selling drugs. Well, we know people in that place are using drugs. If people are using drugs, people are selling drugs. And if people are selling drugs, they're laundering money. So everybody has an exposure to money laundering, whether you accept it or not, or whether you appreciate it or not. And if you sell a house to someone and that person is paying off part of their mortgage with the profits of drugs, that's money laundering.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to understand that.
But
I guess it's a little bit like you said earlier, that the regulator's going to be looking to adapt and change as this rolls out. And so similar with businesses.
Yeah.
So you make a start and then you adapt and you change and you learn what works and what doesn't and where your risks are. It's never going to be static. It's going to be constantly evolving, especially in the world where, technology is moving at rapid paces that no one can understand, trying to keep up with that from a regulatory perspective and therefore a technology systems process has to continue to evolve as well. Yeah.
Your vision of this whole problem will evolve as well as you see how the market reacts to it and how the transactions actually going through and how it's getting reported.
That's right. And we've seen that where we've been involved in other parts of the economy. So we, in Australia, had a massive problem of money laundering through our big casinos. People would turn up with literal bags of cash. We took action. We did take regulatory action against some of those, but many of those big casinos have changed their practices and that doesn't come here anymore. It does go somewhere else, but it's not here. It's not in our economy. We still do have some challenges with the gambling industry, or I completely let them off the
that's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast. But it's an example of where people cracked down on it. They understood the nature of the problem that we're dealing with. They shifted it and they've got it out of that part of the economy.
Yeah.
But it does move.
That's the thing. Like long-term regulated countries, they're seeing now other businesses that are not currently regulated. And whether or not that just continues to expand is just probably an open question, to be fair.
Yeah.
Claudia Smith, would you like a pitching APLYiD question or a history question?
I don't mind. You choose.
I'll choose. I'll do a pitching APLYiD question, shall I? No, I'll do the history. What did the New Zealand rollout teach us that would be wise for Australian businesses to know before Tranche 2 begins?
Ooh.
All over the place with the cards, by the way.
Yeah. New Zealand was interesting because it staged the industries. So I think lawyers went first, then accountants and real estate agents, whereas in Australia
It
it's
gave real estate a lot longer to try and not do it.
it did give the real estate agents a little bit longer to adjust. And so it did happen over a longer period of time. And I think organisations had a year to actually get their processes in place. So I think Australia is different, although New Zealand did it 8 years ago now. So there is a lot of learning. And I think the systems and processes and software and tools that are available are far more advanced now than they were back when New Zealand rolled it out. And so I think in lots of ways, the Australian market is very lucky because there's learnings from markets that have gone before. There's advanced technology and systems and processes that mean it really shouldn't be difficult to comply. And you guys have been incredible from a support perspective in terms of the training and guidance and tools you've given. So I think personally, all of that learning and history that's gone before puts the Aussie market in a great position to actually be able to get on board really quickly.
Very good. AJ, what are you hearing from your network on the up-and-coming Tranche 2 regulations? What are people nervous about? Or are they not?
I think they're getting less nervous now as time goes on and there's a lot more information that the partners are feeding out and like AUSTRAC's feeding out, and you also got a lot of AML providers like you got APLYiD, but then you've got like Easy AML, ScanTech, Info.
Hey, you're not allowed to talk about competitors unless you just delete that.
But yeah, you can
Lots of good businesses.
But there is a lot of business. There's a lot of appetite for business, and the new businesses starting in this space as well. So I think there has been a lot of information out there, and the franchise groups, the larger ones, are starting to do a lot around this as well at the moment. So yeah, it started off very nervous and panicky, I think, and rightly so. But now I think it's starting to get to a point where everyone's kind of getting their head around it.
Thank you. We are 12 minutes away from wrapping up. There's a couple of questions that have come in. Let me see if I can answer them for you. For a small real estate business with property sales of less than $10 million, that's a very large overhead to be compliant. Would you like to answer that? Or would you like to answer that? Or both? Or all of us? I mean, is it though? I mean, we talked a bit before about what you need to be compliant.
Yeah.
Right? One of the things that businesses don't typically know is that this can be a dispersible cost. So if you are in real estate law, you can disperse those costs. It's common practice in all the other countries that AML takes part. Within reason. It's not to be profiteering from it, but it is something that you can pass on. So when you say $10 million, I presume a handful of properties on an annual basis, small boutique business, those people that are buying a property from you at $2-3 million are not going to care about $50-60 worth of AML to be done. What they will care about if it's a rubbish process. And it's a bit of a bottleneck and it's a bit of a pain. So the compliance officer part, you don't necessarily need to have a standalone compliance.
No,
Whatever your team can absolutely be that.
That's right.
So there's a bit of learning there. There's so much stuff from the AUSTRAC guidance that you can actually use, pull out of your pocket.
Yeah. Right? Certainly a small business doesn't require a standalone AML officer, and we've made sure that that's not required. And if you're only doing a small number of transactions a year, that's only a small number of transactions that you're potentially looking at and reporting on.
Exactly. The efforts.
The
minimum.
cost should be small.
Small.
Cost should be very small.
Yeah.
And, the providers out there are designing themselves that there shouldn't be a lot of burden.
Yeah.
So you're actually just giving someone, arguably in your organization, a bit of career development to learn something new and, onboard some new systems that is on a case-by-case basis that really scales with the size of your organization. So,
and I should say, as we get closer to the July start date, for these new obligations, we'll be providing much more information to the public about what's coming and why, and targeting that towards people that might be involved in real estate transactions so that, clients aren't coming into this as blind as they otherwise might be, but there's more information out there saying this is actually a legal requirement and this is why a business is asking you for more information.
I think that's really important, is the education of your clients and your customers. And the more that the general public can be aware of why AML is required and identity verification, know your customer is important, as long as there's not a lot of friction. It shouldn't be too challenging. I think it's really good.
There are a lot of small agents that are asking that exact question. Like, I only do one or two transactions. Yeah, 1 or 2 transactions. That what do I do? Do I have to comply with this? There are a lot of forms providers, like Forms Live, for example, that will do it at little to no cost to smaller players, just so that they're compliant for the small volumes, because the technology is already there.
Yeah,
and we all want to secure this industry. So there will be a lot of that very minimal spend platforms that can get that done for you.
I mean, for us, that's you, Michael Amos. You're exactly the kind of customer that we've been talking about today, which is a small business that doesn't need to get bogged down in the why. You just get on with doing it. It's not actually that hard. It's not going to cost you that much money. And it's something that everybody should be doing, because obviously if you're not, then this leads into the apathy piece we were talking about today. Thanks, guys. Let me see. So, lots of curly questions for you, Brendan. That's why here. Question for, well, there's a couple in for you. What are AUSTRAC's expectations for the risk assessment? For example, what does it need to demonstrate on a reasonable basis?
Yeah, we ask people really to look at 4 things when they do a risk assessment. So it's the nature of their services, what service are you providing to people, what risk does that expose you to, who your customers are. So are your customers local community people, or are they people from another country, for instance? There's that.
Yep.
Level of jurisdiction. There's the channel question. So how are you dealing with your customers and what risk does that expose you to? So are you a business that's dealing with people face-to-face? Are you dealing with people entirely online, for example? The risks are different for those. And there's a jurisdictional risk. So if you're doing business with people outside of Australia, which jurisdictions are they coming from? And is there any risk associated with that jurisdiction? So there's some good material that comes off our website that will point you towards high-risk jurisdictions, those places you might need to worry about. So what we ask you to do is understand those risks as they apply to your business. So if you're a suburban real estate agent and you're selling properties in a very transactional way to regular people, your risk is probably going to be quite low. Yeah. And so what we're asking you to do is understand what might be different that causes you to be suspicious about someone, what stands out, and then what do you do when someone stands out as being risky? What's your internal process to escalate that?
It's pretty common sense, right?
Yeah.
Most of it. That's the thing. You won't not notice it.
No.
You'll be like, oh, this feels a bit not right.
Because most people are low risk, right? The high risk one should stand out.
Yeah. You probably already know. Think about what you've done over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Someone will stand out. You're like, probably shouldn't have done that. Yeah. And those are the things you just want to
report that. Yeah.
Yeah. You shouldn't interfere with your business. Just crack on with what you got to do. That's really important, right? Sorry, AJ, go on.
Would one of those questions be like, you got all these trust structures that are sitting on top of trust and other businesses that are in other businesses? If you start seeing something like that, do you think that should be a red flag?
Oh, yeah. There's a bunch of red flags. And look on our website, we've got lots of red flags and we'll be putting more on those. But anything which someone looks like they're trying to hide the identity of the person that's doing business. So we see internationally a lot of people who are buying properties on behalf of somebody else, and they won't really say who that somebody else is. Or it might be buying property on behalf of another company. You can't really see who owns that company, or there might be another company behind that one. Or where the money behind a property transaction might be coming from multiple sources and you can't really see what the link between those people are. There's lots and lots of red flags, but have a look on our website and we'll keep publishing those. And the more reports we get out of the real estate industry in Australia, for instance, the more that'll tell us about what agents in Australia are seeing. And we'll be pushing that information out to the real estate business to tell them and help them know what to look for more effectively.
Yeah, certainly all in it together, right?
Yeah.
100%. Thank you. Another question. Got time for one more-ish, I think. From Matthew England. I run a multidisciplined business. Congratulations, Matthew. Accounting, PW. Broker, PW. Personal one. Yeah. The broker business is licensed to hire an aggregator. Does the obligation sit with the aggregator or me as the owner to determine the tranche 2 approach?
Probably sits with you as the owner, I would suggest. But you can go on our website. We've got a tool on there which is check if you're regulated.
Yeah.
And it asks you a bunch of questions about your business and the services that you provide. And that will give you a better indication of whether you're providing the kinds of services that fall under this regulation. Mm-hmm. My advice to a business that's worried about it, just err on the side of the fact that it applies to you, and maybe even get some independent advice if you need to, just to be sure of yourself. But have a look at our website in the first instance.
There's so much resource.
And it's fair to say with some organisations, not all activities will fall under needing to go down the AML road. So you might have some activities that you do and then others that actually aren't captured at all. So trying to understand.
So the way the Australian law is structured, it regulates people on what's called designated services.
Yeah.
So in other countries, they regulate an entire profession. So every lawyer will be regulated. In Australia, the law only regulates those lawyers, for example, that provide services that are designated under the Act. So less people are regulated in Australia than in, say, the UK.
Yep.
But it's important to understand whether you provide those kind of services, and that tool on our website will help you work that out.
Nice. There's a few questions here that we didn't get to answer today. So feel free to fire them through to us and we'll try and get them answered for you and through to, again, AUSTRAC's big audio stuff online. That was my Joe Rogan moment. I think I did all right there. Didn't ask Jamie to do anything at all. Didn't pull any weird videos up, so I think we're all safe. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you for those online. I'm giving you 3 minutes back so you can go for a quick loo break before you go back to work. Or if you're still on the treadmill, well done. Thank you very much. Good to see you all. I'll see you, no doubt, on lots of different things moving forward. And good luck to everyone.
Thank you.